I want to reiterate that I think if you start with a really great solid foundation around business robustness and technical development, right? I think those are the right pieces. I mean, the way I think about this is you keep building, you keep de-risking and knocking off challenges, right? You keep climbing on that ladder, but you want to absolutely make sure that the ladder is pointed in the right direction. You don't want to climb the mountain and find out that you're at the wrong spot. So I think the more you can do to ensure that you're going in the right direction is going to be very helpful and actually for you to build faster and in a more cognizant way.
So welcome to the Leaders on a Mission podcast. I'm your host, Simon Leach. And today we have a fascinating episode that really dives into a critical issue facing our world, the carbon footprint of the chemicals industry. And joining us is Harshal Chokhawala, CEO and founder of ZymoChem, a company really at the forefront of revolutionizing this sector through sustainable innovation. And we're going to take a look at Harshal's journey and glean from him his unique insights and the path for decarbonization. So Harshal, thanks so much for coming in and joining the show today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, Simon. And I honestly have been looking forward to this for a while, seeing all the other leaders through the podcast. And I've always found your questions and that story to be quite engaging and also a learning opportunity as we came to this state. So
thank you.
Excited to be here and to share our story.
Yeah, no, thank you very much as well. So look, maybe we'll start just before we go into ZymoChem. Maybe just talk to me a little bit about a couple of impactful moments for you, really from the pre-ZymoChem days that I suppose that led to you wanting to found the company, as it were.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'll take you all the way back here because I think it's an important piece of why I started ZymoChem too. So was born and raised in India in a family where everybody was a small business owner. So we had businesses from making copper wires to making textile garments all the way. My father, my first cousins, like everybody was in that business. And so the entrepreneurial side of things, the bug was already in me since day one, right? And so that to me was a big factor in me starting ZymoChem too, as well, is kind of going back to my roots on that. But the other piece was like, as I was growing up, I really fell in love with chemistry. So that was really my first love. And what that prompted me to do is to go out into the world and get a PhD in chemistry. And so kind of went away from business to do further studies. And as I was doing my chemistry, what I really loved about my journey during my PhD was the beauty and elegance of enzymes and microbes to do the really hard chemistry stuff, but like room temperature with utmost precision, right? And so when I was doing that, I realized that there's a way that is a lot more efficient, more sustainable, and it just basically opens a whole new way of making molecules. And it was quite nascent. I'm talking 2003, 4, 5, right? It was quite nascent, this field. And what I realized that it had the ability to have massive impact, just like organic chemistry had impact on our physical world in the 1900s. Like everything we touch, feel, and wear today is made with organic chemistry largely. And so that was sort of the pivotal moment for me to say, like, okay, there's a new nascent technology with a massive impact. Decided to dedicate 20 plus years of my life doing this. The first half spent really learning from stalwarts in academia in Davis and Berkeley. And the second half was kind of really creating ZymoChem, sort of marrying my entrepreneurial roots with my love for chemistry and enzymes. And so that's where the name for ZymoChem comes from, the enzyme part and the organic chemistry part, right? So it's a little nerdy, but if that's sort of the backstory of how ZymoChem came about.
Got it. Okay, no, great. Just tell me just on that, I'm thinking like you did a chemistry PhD, but the things you're talking about, enzymes, that's more biology, right, as well. Is this where both sides come together? Maybe just outline how that all comes together in a very short kind of way, as it were.
Absolutely. I mean, enzymes are the nature's best catalysts for me, right? And so I'll give you one example of, typically when I was doing my PhD, we would do sugar synthesis, so adding two sugars together. And traditional organic chemistry was really horrible. You don't get good efficiency, you don't get yields, right? and it's very toxic, the kind of solvents you use. But enzymes were so precise, you would get 99.9%, conversion efficiencies. It would all happen in water at room temperature. It was beautiful, right? It was very elegant. And so that was the realization that, hey, if you could use enzymes to do things, they're definitely more sustainable. And what's happened over the last 20, 30 years is our ability to predictably do these things in time and with an investment that makes sense has gone down substantially, right? Like we could do things a lot faster, cheaper, and more precisely. And that's opening up a whole new set of applications where you could marry and replace, a lot of the things that have been traditionally done by organic chemistry with enzymes and microbes, right? And so that's very exciting for me. And that's why, kind of led to the path that where I'm on right now.
Great. Yeah. So when was that? Well, what year was it that you founded the business?
Yeah, so the initial nudge to start ZymoChem was in 2013, but we weren't a real business up till 2015. And so 2013 was like, hey, I want to do this. I was like, okay, transitioning away from academia, and was frustrated by frankly the economics and the approaches a lot of these other companies in the Bay Area were looking at. And thought there would be a better way, a more better technical way to do what we wanted to do, particularly to build technologies and products that could be more efficient and more economically competitive. And that was sort of the urge to start ZymoChem.
Got it. Yeah. And so now when you look at the business, just talk through a little bit about the problems you solve.
Yeah, absolutely. And so fortunately, Simon, actually, these problems haven't changed in sort of the 8-9 years that we've been doing ZymoChem. And sort of really three key issues, right? So the first is really all the materials that we use today are made from linear inputs, right? From fossil-based inputs, right? So this is not circular. So that's the first problem. The second is a lot of this is still manufactured using traditional organic chemistry, which is quite energy intense. So the carbon intensity is quite high, leading to, the carbon footprint of a variety of different products. And that's a known issue for all of us. And so how do you change that? And the third one has been really around, you create these materials and they persist in the environment for a long period of time, right? Much higher than the intended use of a particular product, right? Polymers. And many times they degrade into microplastics, which now, as we are knowing, is a horrible, horrible thing for a number of different reasons. And so the idea for ZymoChem was, in the long term, was to enable materials that go into the goods that we use every day using bio-based technologies that solve these problems. How can we source using renewable inputs? How can we manufacture in a decarbonized way? And how can we create plastics that serve the right purpose without creating an environmental headache, right? And so that's in a nutshell, what we want to do. Is our long-term goal at ZymoChem is to really manufacture goods that we use every day, but designed for a really sustainable economy and not having to compromise on the performance that we get out of these materials, right? That's a key piece. As well as the cost. You want to meet the consumer where they are. It's a key element for adoption.
Right? Got it. So you've got to be on the cost side, you've got to be competitive, and on the performance side, you've got to be better.
Absolutely. And then on the personal connection on this, right, as we would spoken about previously, about 6 years ago, my wife was pregnant, right? Just to give you a little bit of a story over here. And as all great scientists do, I started reading about pregnancy and everything that's associated with it. And what I found then was that microplastics could go through the human placenta, right, in and out, right? And that just blew my gasket as a scientist. I was like, you have to design drugs, you have to design nutrition that does that in a really great way, but microplastics will go in and out. And that to me was an eye opener, saying like, whether intentional or unintentional, the actions that we have taken over decades now have consequences, right? And if we have the opportunity, the ability to use technology to design better materials that find an answer to this, that should be the way forward, right? And so that's where sort of our base comes in, is really to solve the answer, be the solver for these types of problems.
I love the fact that it was such a practical kind of question that you were asking. And so that took you down the journey of super absorbent polymers, right? Specifically,
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that. The problem with super absorbent polymers, around the application and what you were really going out there over the last, 5 years or so to really solve?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a 5-year journey now, and it's been a great journey. And so I don't know if you can see, Simon, on the back over here. I have my 2 kids here dressed as Spider-Man. But our work on super absorbent polymers is as old as they are, which is a little over 5 years now. But in addition to this recognition of the microplastics issue, as my wife was pregnant, when the kids were born, I have twins, a boy and a girl. I firsthand saw how many diapers that I was going through on a daily basis, right? And that kind of hit me that, diaper in its essential form is the quintessential single-use plastic, right? If you think of it that way. I mean, you use it once, you throw it away. And as we were a materials company, you're really using bio-based technologies, what we started to realize was how could we create materials that were more environmentally friendly? And diapers was a massive opportunity on that side, right? And so the personal realization on how much waste we were creating and the focus of the company kind of came together to realize that diapers and hygiene is a massive opportunity. And as we started digging further into it, what we realized was 40% of the weight of a diaper is this material, superabsorbent polymer, which is the hardest working ingredient in the diaper that absorbs the pee and everything else. And that's not biodegradable. And that, when it degrades, leads to microplastics. And so that's when we started to think about the idea of hey, can we develop a material that is biodegradable, but it still gives you this diaper's performance, right, in this application, right? And that's how we went on this journey of creating a bio-based, biodegradable, and low carbon footprint super absorbent polymer, which yesterday we announced, it's called BASE.
Awesome. BAYSE.
BAYSE, but pronounced as BASE, BASE.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And look, big congratulations. And tell us a little bit about, in terms of the functionality, how it performed. Tell us a little bit about the journey to get there, as it were, or to get to this date.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really started with an idea that saying, hey, we wanted to do this, right? And one of the first things we did was to really understand the robustness of this particular product and the value proposition that we bring to the table, right? So as a general rule at ZymoChem, what we really try to understand is if we do want to work on a specific product, a specific chemical from a technology perspective, we want to understand the value proposition that we're bringing to the industry and how big a pain point it is, right? And so one of the first things we actually end up doing is to understand what is the unit cost that our technology can do versus the unit cost of the incumbent. And only if we are sort of in that zone of competitiveness do we actually go forward and dedicate more resources to it. And so there's lots of materials where you're not even in the zone, right? And so for us, it's if you're not competitive on economics, it's really hard to have industry-wide disruption. And so the fundamentals on our end are really, the basis is really around if you can beat folks on cost and add a different performance value to it, the whole industry, the chemical industry, will switch to the new product, the new process over 15, 20, 30 years. And we've seen this time and again in the petrochemical industry. And that's the basis for us. It's can we compete on cost? And so that's the first sort of filter we do. And then the second is to actually really go and talk to users. And so one of the first things we did was actually go out and talk to 40 different brands and manufacturers of hygiene articles to really understand, hey, would you like a bio-based, biodegradable version of this particular polymer that performs as well as you're used to? And long and behold, Simon, by the time we got to the 15th interview, what we realized is we were getting consistent responses to every single question that we were asking, which effectively told us hey, yes, everybody wants this and everybody wants this yesterday. And that gave us a lot of comfort in the sense that, hey, this is sort of the holy grail for the hygiene industry. And then if you can develop a product that performs, that meets the cost structures, and then you can scale it, there is a huge opportunity to have impact with regards to sustainability for a massive hygiene industry. And, hygiene is baby diapers, adult diapers, feminine incontinence, and, feminine hygiene. $155 billion a year, just to give you a sense on the market opportunity there. And 8% of all landfill in the United States. If you look at goods that go into landfill, outside in food and paper, diapers is the third largest item in there. And so from all aspects, the impact that we could have was massive and personal as well. And we found a path that sort of checked all the boxes that we want from a business robustness perspective, from a technical perspective, and that sort of catalyzed the journey of going down the path of investing, 5+ years of my life and the team's life, a lot of dollars from a variety of different sources as well, to build to where we are today.
Awesome. What was the biggest challenge? I mean, I get we've got the the need, and you're really solving a big pain point, and it needs to be large for you to transform the industry. But over that journey, what's been the largest challenge, you think, or the challenges, I should say?
How much time do we have?
The top one or two, then.
Yeah. No, I think, it really depends on the stage. As you keep ticking things off, the challenge keeps changing, right? And so, I want to reiterate that I think if you start with a really great solid foundation around business robustness and technical development, right? I think those are the right pieces. I mean, the way I think about this is you keep building, you keep de-risking and knocking off challenges, right? You keep climbing on that ladder, but you want to absolutely make sure that the ladder is pointed in the right direction. You don't want to climb the mountain and find out that you're at the wrong spot. So I think the more you can do to ensure that you're going in the right direction is going to be very helpful and actually for you to build faster and in a more cognizant way. And so, last year, if I summarize, my biggest challenge last year was fundraising. I mean, that was brutal environment to raise financing, and you really needed to hit it out of the park on every single aspects of your business. Can you make money? Is there technology there? Do you have the performance? Do you have the team? Do you have the partners? Like, you had to have everything in a perfect puzzle to raise money. And so I think, last year that was that. The year before that was really around team growth and maintaining culture, right? I mean, we're going from a small team and literally tripled in size. And, obviously you want to make sure that the values that we have created get propagated and get conserved and get built on, right? And so to me, that was the first time we faced that big of a growth. And so that was an important piece of the puzzle then too. And this year is scaling and putting the product onto the market. So, the joy of entrepreneurship, these keeps changing, and I love it.
Well, and it must go round in a circle. So surely, like next year, there'll be a fundraising, and then there'll be a bigger culture to concern yourself with. And but what is it about that you love them? Because a lot of people are like, oh, man, that's hard work. Right, that's hard work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll be honest. I mean, I think a part of this for me personally is I love this. I enjoy this, right? I truly do. I love the fact that we're working on a mission and vision that is very personal to me, and that's personal to everybody who's working at ZymoChem. And I think it's one of the key pieces as well is you're doing something hard that nobody's ever done before, and it has massive impact, which means you have to do something that has never been done before, which is hard. And I love to work on hard problems. You have a limited time on this planet, and personally for me, I want to make sure that it's spent in doing something that is worthwhile to me. And certainly this marries, as I said, a lot of different things in my life over the years: entrepreneurship, the love for chemistry, the love for enzymes, the love for building things and solving challenges. And so, I think it's quite rewarding once you find what you want to do in life and then have the luxury, I would say, or the ability to dedicate a large portion of your life actually doing it. The journey is beautiful.
Yeah. Can I just ask you about success with that? Because I get that. And, like sometimes when you're charting a path of doing something that's not been done before, there's more failure, within that. If I look at the history of failure, that failure inspires the next generation as well. So failure, sometimes on the grand scheme of things, isn't failure. It might be personal failure. I'm wondering, is that something you think about, and is that it is like getting to success and being successful with it, is that the real driver that gets you up as well, like every single day coming to the office and being motivated?
Yeah, I mean, so the mission and the vision gets me out of the bed every morning, right? Jump out of the bed there. Failure. I have a very interesting view on failure, Simon. I mean, I actually wish it upon a lot of people because that's when you learn, right? So when you do something that's very hard, failure is inevitable, right? You are going to fail. You are going to make choices that are not correct, and that's the opportunity where you get to learn and grow. Whether it's making mistakes around hiring, whether it's mistakes around technology choices. I mean, these are meant to happen because certain things just haven't been done before, and you try to make decisions on first principles, and you will be wrong. I mean, that's the part of it. Uh, but I think that's where the growth comes from. And I think that's really critical is how fast you recognize that failure, learn from it, and then move to the next stage. And so I
Yeah.
actually think that's an integral piece of this. Now, the other side of this is you want to learn from the failures or mistakes from others as well, right? And I think, that's a critical portion of what we do at ZymoChem too, is really understand there's been a lot of capital, a lot of companies that have come before us in this space. And how do you learn from mistakes that others have made and help position ZymoChem and the company and what you're doing in a way that can be successful and learn from those mistakes? And so I think looking around that curve is an important element that I also look at, both from a technology perspective, but also from a people perspective, right? Folks that have experienced this failure firsthand know exactly how to, devise a strategy that helps you be cognizant of that or avoid that.
When you think about, just again at a high level, some of the key lessons that you've learnt them from others, just when you look at the history of where you've come from, what are some of the things that stand out with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one piece, and I'll say that's again, I think economics is a big driver, right? And in the chemicals industry, the materials industry is really driven by that. And so one lesson that I'll share here is that should be front and center for everything that you do. And I'm not just talking about, the choice around the technology, but it's also around how you build a business, right? Um, and benchmarking, business robustness, technical robustness, scaling, how do you build a team, etc. You really need to have economics as sort of the front and center on that particular journey. And I feel like there's been a lot of learnings over the years around that. That was not the driver for the business, and it sort of unfolds in various ways. So that's sort of one big piece that I'll say that is an important piece. The second one is you have to be very conscious as how you're building the company. And that's the other piece that I want to highlight for the audience over here. Particularly around, we now understand it takes time to build technologies out, to scale technologies out, and then put it onto the market and have some penetration around that too. And so as a founder, as a CEO, as an organization, as a leadership, you should be very conscious about that. And you should have the stage at which you are at matched with the sort of the appetite on how you want to build the company, right? So as an example, we're here in the early days of ZymoChem, sort of 2015 to 2019, 2020, we were a research organization, right? And we knew that. And so we approached financing the company from that perspective. We got a ton of government support in those early days. We had some early financial backers, SOSV breakout labs, that were really funding science with the view to have massive impact. And so we were quite cognizant that we were not ready for venture financing, right? It puts you on a trajectory, puts you on a timeline that we were just not there. And so I think you have to recognize the strategy that you're putting in place and then look at it from like, hey, what do the investors also want in return for that? And then raise that capital in an appropriate manner. And so really conscious building around the technology, the company, the scaling, etc. Right?
Yeah, no, great. No, thank you. Back to the product, like a little bit around the base product now, and give us a view on, I suppose, how you're commercializing that first of all, and how you're bringing that to the market.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the audiences, we formally announced the launch of Base BAYSE, but pronounced as Base BASE, which is our first ingredient. It's a bio-based, biodegradable, low carbon footprint superabsorbent polymer. This is a new material that ZymoChem has invented and is commercializing. And to us, it's a foundational, future forward ingredient, which is going to be a cornerstone for sustainability in the hygiene industry, as well as a number of other industries such as personal care, home care, agriculture, water. Like it has a lot of different applications. And so we're very excited to bring this technology to a number of different industries. And currently can't really share exactly how we're doing this in detail, but the underlying piece that we're kind of really aiming for over here is to demonstrate these large industries that you can adopt and go towards sustainability without really impacting performance or cost, right? I mean, that's what we truly want to demonstrate the hygiene industry and other industries that are there.
Great. Okay, no, great stuff. And can you say a little bit about the ingredient itself? It's like a PLA replacement or something like this, right?
A polyacrylic acid replacement. So today's superabsorbent polymers are typically polyacrylic acid based. Some are polyacrylamide based. They're all derived from fossil-based inputs. They're not biodegradable. They break down into microplastics, and in some instances, they break down to create toxins. And so not really a very, sustainable material. And what we have developed is a bio-based, bio-derived superabsorbent polymer that is, the underlying chemical structure is quite different than that. It is made via fermentation. And what it really lends is an alternative material for this particular industry. So I like to think about this like what PLA has been doing for replacing single-use plastics such as polyethylene, polypropylene, PET. Same type of a concept. It's a new material that is bio-based, bio-derived, and biodegradable.
Yeah, no, got it. Okay, no, great. And in terms of economics, what I always find interesting is when you look at the chemical industry, they're known for being really efficient. And this is always the challenge with cost, right? It's just like how they bring things, to market at absolute scale. Yeah, it must be so daunting when you're looking at the economics and you're trying to kind of work them out. Just talk a little bit about how you get the economics to work.
So the first piece is really how you design the technology, right? And so one of the first things that we did at ZymoChem was to understand what drives economics using fermentation-based approaches. And if you look at a typical economic model, a unit cost model for fermentation-based products, typically 70%, 80% of the cost is driven by the cost of the raw material that you put in, right? Especially for products that we're talking about that are adopted at mass scales, that's the biggest driver of unit economics. And a lot of carbon during fermentation that you put in actually gets wasted in the form of CO2. And so when we started ZymoChem, we started thinking about technologies like, hey, how can I make sure that all the carbon ends up in my final product, right? I mean, if you look at from an organic chemistry perspective, that industry is so efficient, as you mentioned, not just in terms of scale, but in terms of efficiency. Like every single atom that they put into that refinery gets repurposed into a product. It's beautiful, right? And then when you look at the biology, it's so precise, it's so benign, it's so beautiful, but still we waste a lot of carbon and CO2 during fermentation. And so one of the things we decided to do is rewire the bug and invent a technology where that carbon is not lost to CO2, but it's actually repurposed so that you actually end up in the product, right? We've devised a technology that now matches the efficiency of fossil-based manufacturing using traditional organic chemistry, but is far more sustainable using renewable inputs, using fermentation, remaking a lot of everyday materials, right? Superabsorbents is one of them. Nylons is another one that we're working on, really decarbonizing heavy materials that we all love and use today.
Awesome. So that's the innovation, the carbon kind of saving kind of microbe you use compared to maybe other microbes and other bugs out there in the market, as it were.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big driver for ZymoChem. Is the carbon conservation technology that we have been developing since 2015.
And just tell me, as you can tell, I'm not a scientist, right? but you know that about me anyway. But so when that comes to scale, when you take that from your lab and you start really scaling that up, how does that impact you? That carbon saving technology impact on that scale?
Absolutely. So think about this, right? So I'll give you an analogy saying, if you were to apply this to ethanol production or beer manufacturing, right, you would basically get a 9-pack for the price of a 6-pack, right? That's kind of the impact that you would have on unit economics. You get a lot more product per unit input. And then the other piece around this is scalability, right? So ethanol fermentation is the world's most scaled process, right? It's very it's deployed everywhere. It's very scalable. And one of the reasons why it's so scalable is because when you're making ethanol, the fermenter itself is anaerobic. You're not pumping in air. And that's a big piece of the puzzle, is how do you mix air very effectively so that production happens? During ethanol fermentation, that's not needed. That's why you could scale it. And so our carbon conservation technology that we have developed is also anaerobic, which translates to better scalability, right? And what that means is effectively you're making a lot more product and you're more scalable, which is cost at scale, which is kind of the important piece. Right?
Okay. So it's really the whole foundation of the business and the whole foundation of the technology, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. No, awesome.
It's the base of the technology, if you were to play on that word again.
Exactly. No, very neat, very elegant, as you would say. So tell me, how do you see, say, the chemical industry and its, where we are on the decarbonization kind of process, as it were? There's lots of talk about that. Well, where do you see things?
Yeah, I think still very early days, Simon, right? I mean, I think the industry, and if you look at, press releases by all global major chemical corporations, they've all set themselves targets for decarbonization. They all publicly said that decarbonizing is not just lip service, but it's actually as important as making products, right? So this is where the industry is headed. And there's a lot of effort being pulled in here to develop this. One approach to decarbonizing the chemicals industry is obviously using biology, right? That's one aspect of how you could reinvent manufacturing. And within that, I think PLA is a great example that has been around for decades now, right? In terms of a particular product, a material that's being there. 1,3-propanediol, that's another one. 1,4-butanediol is another one. So there's been some key successes in this industry on driving decarbonized solutions for, petrochemical-based, petroleum-derived products. But still quite early days. There's few more products coming on stream now, which has me also a lot of excited. Major capital being invested as well in this industry, and certainly a lot of potential as we go forward.
Yeah, awesome. No, that's great. And where do you see like the role of ZymoChem across that value chain? Because I know it's it's an evolving thing, right? How do you bring chemicals to great scale? Do you build, run, own, manufacture your own facilities? Do you license? Give us some thinking towards how you're viewing where you can have the best impact or the most impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're into manufacturing. So we want to be a chemicals company, right, which manufactures and sells products, right? That's who ZymoChem is. And we're not just a technology provider, so we don't really love licensing in that shape and form. We want to work with partners who want to bring change to their businesses and other businesses And so we routinely partner with very large chemical companies, brands, etc., who want to bring materials that we are developing, technologies that we're developing to their materials to the market. And so our preferred model is really to partner across the value chain. And we are the technology developer, the scaler, and in partnership with others, sort of manufacturer of these products to bring to the supply chain.
Yeah, no, got it. And from a target market, are you going to maintain the focus very specifically on the hygiene market? Because I know you can, you don't need to stop there. I know you could do lots of stuff across many industries. So how do you view that kind of paradigm?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always a struggle, right, to go between commercialization and innovation, commercialization and technology development, right? There's always a balance there. And certainly the base material that we're bringing to hygiene and other industries is very advanced. And so we're quite heavily focused on that from a commercialization perspective, right? But we have a lot of other materials that we're working internally in the pipeline that are not quite ready from a commercial perspective, but have massive impact as well, and have massive demand from a consumer level as well. Another one is bio-based nylons, and we're seeing that being a major driver of value within ZymoChem as well, in terms of product space.
Yeah. No, I've heard that with the bio-based nylon, and that must have its own challenges though, because that nylon product it's a very robust product, isn't it? It's performance-wise very good, isn't it?
It is very good, absolutely, and kudos to the chemical industry for that. And DuPont invented it in the 1900s. But the process hasn't essentially changed and has a really bad problem around carbon footprint. There's a lot of nitrous oxide emissions that come from it, which is a really potent GHG, molecule. And so we see a massive opportunity there to change how it is manufactured and how the sourcing of this material comes.
Awesome. Okay, so exciting. Yeah, just to finish off with, just thinking about the company, right? And you spoke a little bit about scaling and culture, and I mean, tell me a little bit about when you've had to lean in and build this culture, and how have you gone around it? What's worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? How have you gone around ensuring that you've got the culture that you want at the company?
So in the early days, we actually weren't very intentional around building a specific culture, right? And one thing we did very well in building the team was being very focused on impact and making sure that we're thinking about the problems in the right way. We're learning from the industry, etc. And what we realized when we hit about sort of 15, 20 people, that we had sort of built this culture organically. And so one of the first things we did is to understand what the culture at ZymoChem is and put it on paper, right? Put it in words and really understand that. And what we realized is that, a lot of it was organic, folks that we had hired early on and how collectively we all thought together, how we acted, and that sort of became the culture at ZymoChem. And so what wasn't intentional in that sense, but I think our guiding principles around mission, vision, how we thought about problems, technical and non-technical, really led to building the culture the way that it's existing at ZymoChem. And so, and since then, we've now made a conscious effort to making sure that, that gets reinforced as we continue to grow the company. Now we're almost 60 people. And so certainly growing quite in size, and recognizing folks that act in a certain way, right, that reinforce the culture in a positive way has been a great tool to reinforce how we should be doing things, how we should be building things. And so that's been the way, to be honest, how we've approached it today. And, very grateful for the early members of the team and some of the leadership at ZymoChem too, that have had a big hand in this.
Yeah. Do you think it's when they're aligned with the mission, that's hard. It sounds like that's half the battle, first of all, why they come to work and what they enjoy about coming to work. Obviously, you have the other half is about, behaviors and how people work together and how communication happens and how things get resolved and how teams solve problems together. That's more behavioral. But it sounds like when you've got the mission stuff, first of all, that's your kind of base level, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. And the other piece that I found too is we've ended up hiring a lot of folks early on with high agency. And I think that also helped a lot in shaping how decisions are made, and why decisions are made in a certain way. And I think that has helped quite a bit as well with the cultural side of things from an operational perspective, right? Where you really were quite focused on identifying and solving key risk and key problems as the driver for a lot of how decisions are made, how discussions are had. Right?
Yeah. Awesome. Look, that's great, Harshal. Really, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your journey, and love the innovative work you do at ZymoChem and your passion and mission to decarbonize the chemical industry. So your insights and were very interesting and engaging. So thanks so much for coming on, and to all the listeners out there, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Leaders on a Mission. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe, rate, and review our show on your favorite podcast platform, and stay tuned for more inspiring stories from visionary leaders driving change in their industry.